So building on from the triads, we now need to look at extended chords. And chords that have more than 3 notes, so 4 or more notes, are called extended chords. And the next step in this sequence is to look at the sevenths. They are the next 4-noted chord in the sequence after a triad. It is possible to have sevenths, ninths, 11th, so 13th, etc., so on and so forth. Okay, so we're really looking at sevenths today. That's where we have one extra note in the diatonic sequence of chords that we've already learned from looking at the triads. Remember, to be diatonic, they must be within the family of notes. That's what the diatonic part means. Okay, so yes, there are other sevenths that can be made, but we are only looking at the sevenths that are generated from the diatonic sequence, i.e. the major scale today. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to go back. There's 4 types of chords generated in a diatonic sequence, and they are a major seventh type of chord, a minor seventh, a dominant seventh, and when we extend the diminished chord, it actually becomes a minor 7 flattened fifth when using the notes from the diatonic scale. So if we were to look at the triad of C major, we already know that we have C, E and G. If I use the scale and I continued to play that game of leapfrog that we had to generate these notes, the next note, if I started on G, missed a note, missed A out, and then the next note would be B. So that's the next note in this sequence of diatonics. So C, E, G, and now we're adding a B. B happens to be the 7th note of the C major scale. To fully understand what type of chord that generates, we've got to go back to learning the spacing between each note. So if our start note is C, we already know this is C major because it has a start note, a space of 4 to E, and then a space of 3 semitones to G. But now we've got to work out what it is from G to B. And in this case, G to B is G is your start note. So G to G sharp, A sharp to B is a space of 4 again. And that produces a major 7th. Okay, so that spacing of start note plus 4 semitones to the next note plus 3 to the next and then plus 4 gives us a C major 7. In a couple of slides time, or in the next slide, you will hear some examples of these chords, so don't worry about how they sound right this minute, but feel free to skip ahead and have a little listen, and you can hear it adds another nice little flavour to the chord. It makes it a bit more complicated and gives it a different sort of a vibe. So as before, we know that D, F and A makes D minor because we have a start note plus 3 plus 4. It's the other way round for major, isn't it? So 4 plus 3 for a major, 3 plus 4 for a minor. But now we've got an added C in the sequence. So D, F, A and C, the distance between A and C is another 3 semitones. So if we add that step, that forms a minor 7th chord. So we have a start note plus 3 plus 4 plus 3, that's a minor 7th. Before we did plus 4 plus 3 plus 4 makes a major 7th. And then we can go back through these notes and work out all these intervals. And we'll realise that the first 4 chords are quite easy to work out using that system because it's either one of those. So we have a C major 7, followed by a D minor 7, followed by an E minor 7, followed by an F major 7. Now in the diatonic sequence, when we get to the 5th chord, G, the 5th chord is always called the dominant chord, okay? It's a chord that you would use, you might use it before landing back on a C sometimes. It's dominant in that scale, and for a few different reasons, and that's another lesson really. So for now, just accept that the 5th chord is we call it the dominant chord, okay? And if we were to use that stepping stone system from the scale, we would end up with G, B, D and F, because you've got G, miss a note from A to B, B, miss a note C to D, D, miss a note E to F. In the scale of C major, don't forget we're working here, we're not working from G, we're working from C. So in the key of C, that provides G, B, D, and F, and that is a start note of G, plus 4 semitones to B, plus 3 to D, and then another 3 to F. So it's different from a major seventh, because although the first 3 notes are a major chord, that fourth note is 3 semitones and not 4. So it's actually, it's like taking the seventh note of that major scale, the C major chord, sorry, and it's like flattening it. Okay, it's like taking it back a step. So that provides us with a chord called G dominant 7. And that's signified in shorthand just by the letter G and then the number 7. So G7 means G dominant 7. If that said G maj 7, that would mean G major 7. If it said G M7, it would be G minor 7. But the shorthand version of a dominant chord is just to have the letter name followed by the number. Then our 6th chord, our relative minor of C major, provides us with a minor 7th. And the really complicated one is where we have the 7th chord, which is normally, the triad would be a diminished chord. We have a B, D, F, which is B diminished, but now we are adding an A note from this diatonic sequence, and that is a space of 4 added on, and that becomes a minor 7 flattened 5th. And at the moment, I don't need you to explain that. All you need to accept is that the figures, the number between them, is a start note plus 3, plus 3, plus 4. Now here's some of you asking yourself, well, why isn't that just called a diminished 7th? And the reason it's not called a diminished 7th is a diminished 7th would be a spacing of the start note plus 3, plus 3, plus 3. But this provides us with a plus 4, making it a B minor 7 with a flattened 5th note. There's plenty of YouTube videos out there explaining that if you do want to go further, but for the purpose of this, all I'm asking you to acknowledge is the semitone spacings between each of these notes to make the type of chord. So to recap, we've got C major, and then that becomes C major 7. Then we have a D minor, which becomes a D minor 7. E minor becomes E minor 7. F major becomes F major 7. And G major becomes G dominant 7. That 5th chord is a dominant 7th. The 6th chord becomes from A minor to A minor 7. And the 7th chord becomes from a B diminished to a B minor 7 flattened 5th. If we were in the key of G, the same chord patterns arrive. Okay, now remember with G, it's different from C major because G has 1 sharp in it. So the notes for G major would be G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. And if I were to use those notes instead of these here, we would end up with G major becoming G major 7, A minor becoming A minor 7, B minor would become B minor 7, C major would become C major 7, D major would become D dominant 7th, E minor would become E minor 7, and F sharp diminished would become F sharp minor 7 flattened 5th. That's if we were in the key of G. Recapping there, then we have a start note plus 4 plus 3 plus 4 is major 7th, plus 3 plus 4 plus 3 is minor 7th, plus 4 plus 3 plus 3 dominant 7th, plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 minus 7 flattened 5th. If we were to go for the diminished 7th, we would be flattening that last note in the diminished chord, and that would then provide us with the note of A flat, which is not in the key of C major. That's why we're not using it here. You can have a diminished 7th chord, and you're welcome to use it in its place if you like the sound of it. Remember, these are only guidelines; they're not hard fixed rules to write music by. But if you want to stick within the key, these are the chords that they produce. Please feel free to take the time to listen to these chords, listen to the C and then the C major 7. Followed by the C major 7. So a nice little difference there, okay? You can carry on going through the rest of the sequence. So I'm going to skip through all of the sound clips. Okay, and the final slide, what I've done for you here is provided you with a table that gives us the key of C major here, then the key of G. So this is essentially the circle of fifths, okay? The triads they produce, that pattern of major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and diminished. Then the Roman numeral equivalent for the purposes of transposition. And then the seventh chord extension. So the first major chord becomes a major seventh. Second minor chord becomes a minor seventh. Third minor chord becomes a minor seventh. The fourth major chord becomes a major seventh. The fifth major chord becomes a dominant seventh. That's really crucial. Sixth minor chord becomes a minor seven. And the seventh diminished becomes a minor seven flat five. That is quite a lot to take in, so please rewind the video many times. Take it a slide at a time. Make your own notes. Essentially, your essay, your report writing that I'm asking you to do for the first assignment is making sense of all this stuff in your own way. Remember to do outside reading and pull in, quotes and references, and read a piece of information. Tell us what that implies. If you find something that contradicts what I've said, challenge it. Put it in there. It's not a problem. Again, there are so many ways of saying the same thing in music, and different people have different ways of saying the same thing. But you're all doing really well. So keep going. Well done.